Hi everyone and welcome to week 2. We survived week 1. It was wonderful to get to know all of you on the discussion board. Thank you for taking the time and effort to share a little bit about yourself and your interests and why you're taking this class. It's always nice to hear an orientation to how people got here and what they might use this degree or even just this class for. So thank you for sharing. I wanted to just recap last week. We talked about the rhetorical situation, and I can't stress how important this one particular concept is throughout this whole quarter and honestly throughout your lives. Even if you don't decide to take the path of visual communication as a career path, the rhetorical situation can suit you in a management position in nearly any industry. Being able to communicate and understand the context and larger scene that you're communicating in is very important. It can make your communication more efficient, more effective, more sensitive to the people and surroundings that contextualize the communication, and it can just make it a more complete experience. So keep it in the back of your mind for your career, but keep it at the forefront of your mind for this class. You should be using it on every single milestone for this class and even every journal entry, because audience especially will be a very big point in your journal entries. You'll need to consider who you're designing a message for to understand how, for example, this week they're going to perceive it or receive it. So keep the rhetorical situation at the forefront of your mind. This week we'll be discussing the Gestalt principles. This is also another really foundational theory for this course, so you'll want to keep that in mind as well. We'll be using them on every single milestone that you do, and you'll need to use the Gestalt theories to justify your choices that you make, your design choices for the final project. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I know the final project probably seems like a long way off, but it'll come up quick. So just make sure that you're using these as you go along. If you have questions, I'm here to answer them or help you brainstorm. I really enjoy doing that, as I've mentioned before. 2 other things I just wanted to touch on. Critical thought is extremely important in any graduate class you take, and it's especially important to me. I'm a critical theorist, and so I like to see students applying their knowledge and using it in unique ways. So not to put too much pressure on you, but I do expect that what you read in the book will be transformed somehow. It's not very interesting for me to read or very useful for you to regurgitate what you've read in the textbook. So please, by all means, use citations, but cut down on the quotes from the book. That's one way that you can help incite critical thinking in your journal entries and also your discussion posts. So I'll be looking for critical thought in both of those areas. And if you have questions about that, you're welcome to check out the rubric. There's a little more information on there about what I'm looking for in critical thought. So I'll also post some resources that you can use to develop critical thinking, but I wanted to offer you here just a few things that you can do to enhance your critical thinking in your journal entries and also on your discussion posts. And this will maybe get easier as the quarter goes on, at least that's my hope. So the first thing you can do is make connections among ideas. So for this week's discussion post, perhaps you discuss or think about how the Gestalt principles relate to the rhetorical situation. It's not necessarily an obvious relationship, but there is one there, and to explore that in your own life and based on your own experiences is really productive. So I really encourage you to make connections among different theoretical ideas. The second way you can incite critical thinking in your work is to apply the things that you've read in the textbook to your everyday life, to your career. Career would be the most optimal, probably the most productive for you. Or also the specific design work that you're doing in this class. It is never a bad idea to reference the specific press release that you're working with this quarter. Or if you can think of another example, you'll notice that in the discussion prompts, you're very frequently asked to add an example. So if you want to use those types of examples and weave them into your journal entries as well, that's great. The more concrete and specific you can be, the better you're going to become at integrating critical thinking into your writing and thought process. So those are the 2 main ways I would suggest developing critical thinking. A third way, which takes a little bit of extra time, is to do some extra research, to see what's out there in the peer-reviewed journal articles through the library. That's another way to promote critical thinking, and that's just gathering more ideas to put in conversation with one another or to expand the ideas we're talking about in this class. So there you have 3 kind of ways that you can develop your critical thinking, and like I said, I'll post some more questions to keep you thinking. And then the last thing I want to highlight is that in this week's journal entry, you're asked to talk about audience perception. And I would just ask that you're doing that specifically in relationship to milestone 1. So milestone 1 will be due in module 3, so next week. And you'll need to begin to justify and think about how your audience will perceive your infographic that you're going to create. So being able to think about that now will make the process of creating the infographic a little more deliberate, which is very important. So think about it that way. And also, I would encourage you to be as specific as you can. I know that you won't have your infographic done this week. That is not an expectation. It's not due until next week. But in this planning stage, the more specific you can be, the better. That way I can offer you more relevant feedback that will make your infographic final product be better. So if you talk about audience perception, apply it to specific things you will do in your infographic, or a design technique you'll use in your infographic that will help convey the message so that the audience perception is clearer. So we reviewed last week, we talked about the rhetorical situation, moved on to the Gestalt principles this week as 2 things that you'll need to remember throughout the quarter. I talked about critical thinking, and then I also just mentioned a note about this week's journal to help you have stronger writing. So I hope these things are helpful. Again, I'm always here if you have questions. But take care, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.